everybody. Welcome back to Brutus on Baseball and my series all about the prospect bus in the history of my card collecting days. I've already walked you from 1988 to 1992, and we're starting this video off in 1993. The big player that year, for me at least, was Jeffrey Hammonds. Hammonds was one of the biggest players coming out of Stanford for the 1992 draft, but his anticipated bonus demands dropped him all the way to the number 4 pick that the Baltimore Orioles had. He shot up the prospect rankings, getting to number 3 prior to the 1994 season, and only a year after being drafted, he was called up to the big league Orioles team in the summer of 1993. Hammonds had a lot of base cards, but the year 1992-93 coincided with the huge rise of insert cards, and that's what I remember searching for most when it came to Jeffrey Hammonds. Cards like his 1993 Flair Wave of the Future and his 1993 Leaf Gold rookies were the two that I remember trying to break out of packs or pick up at card shows whenever I got the chance. But unfortunately, in that very first year of playing in 1993, he went on the disabled list right away, first with a pinched nerve and then a more serious neck injury. And that was a sign of things to come for Hammonds, as he went on to injure pretty much every part of his body over the course of his major league career. Even though he played parts of 13 seasons in the big leagues, he only amassed 957 big league games, which is equivalent to about 6 full major league seasons, meaning that he missed over half of his career time on the disabled list. When he did play, he was pretty decent, including an all-star selection in the year 2000 when he played for the Colorado Rockies. Although he was kind of a classic case of his numbers being inflated by the thin air in Denver. After he retired in 2005, he stayed in the game, working as a scout for the Padres for a while, and then being hired by the Major League Baseball Players Association for their player development program in 2014. Hammonds got a great education while at Stanford and was able to use that even after his playing career ended. Jeffrey Hammonds is a great example of a player that had a lot of star talent and potential, but just couldn't stay on the field to be able to recognize all that he could do. Next up, in 1994, is Brooks Kieschnick. Kieschnick was a two-way player that excelled for the University of Texas Longhorns, smashing 43 home runs over the course of his college career and compiling a record of 34 wins against 8 losses. He was named the Baseball America College Player of the Year in 1993. Going into the draft that season, Major League teams were having a difficult time trying to evaluate whether he was a big league hitter or a big league pitcher. And this was before the time of Shohei Ohtani, who could do both really well. Perhaps Kieschnick could have done that, but at that time, every team wanted to know, was he going to have a better future as a hitter or a pitcher? But the Cubs took a flyer on him as the 10th pick in the 1993 draft as a two-way player, just to give him a shot and see what he could do on both sides of the ball. In the early to mid-90s, this is when baseball card products were also changing quite drastically, and a lot of really young players were beginning to be inserted into baseball card sets, even though they had never made the major league team or even appeared on the 40-man roster. This was heavily promoted in 1992 Bowman, for example, and became more and more the norm as the 90s went on. Because of that, Kieschnick was included in a ton of 1994 products, even though he hadn't made the major league team. The Kieschnick cards that really stood out in my mind were the 1994 Pinnacle and SP and Bowman rookies, although they wouldn't be considered rookies according to today's rules. But the two-way experiment for the Cubs wouldn't last very long, as the Cubs had Brooks focus solely on playing the outfield and hitting starting in the 1994 season. They just figured he wouldn't be able to be accelerated into the major league team if he had to focus on both at the same time. And because of that, he never really got to play on both sides of the ball until his career had already stalled. And he found himself with the Brewers as a 31-year-old in 2003. Kieschnick had been an outfielder for most of his career up to that point, but the Brewers decided to bring him in and give him another chance to play on both sides of the ball. He did have success for the Brewers that year, even though it was limited. He had a 149 OPS plus in only a handful of at-bats for the Brewers, and a 117 ERA plus as a relief pitcher, showing that he had the potential to be able to do both. But his career up to that point just didn't support that he was a major league quality hitter. We will never know if he could have done more with his career if the Cubs had decided to develop him differently. But as it was, he retired after the 2004 season at the age of 32, and eventually went on to own a medical device distribution company in San Antonio, Texas. Next up, going into the 1995 season, was the big prospect for the Yankees, Ruben Rivera. Ruben Rivera was a highly touted prospect that signed out of Panama in 1990 as a 16-year-old. He was also the cousin of another up-and-coming Yankees prospect, Mariano Rivera. Ruben had all of the tools to be a huge baseball star, ranked as the number 2 prospect in baseball in 1995 and the number 3 prospect in 1996. He was called up to the big league squad for the Yankees for one at-bat in the 1995 season, and then for a longer stint in the 1996 season. Rivera's biggest cards were his lone appearance in the 1994 Bowman set, and his follow-up appearances in 1995 Bowman and 1995 Bowman's Best. These were the cards that were being highly sought after in 95. Not Vlad Guerrero, not Scott Rowland. It was Ruben Rivera that was the prospect to have. But for all of his tools, it would be Rivera's attitude that would keep getting in his way throughout his major league career. The Yankees quickly grew tired of his work ethic and traded him away prior to the 1997 season, while he was still a pretty big prospect, to the San Diego Padres, where he spent playing 4 very mediocre seasons, never really living up to the hype. He then bounced around, switching teams 6 times between 2001 and 2003, before finishing with the Baltimore Orioles AAA team. The strangest moment of his career, though, was when the Yankees decided to bring him back as a free agent prior to the 2002 season. But in spring training, before the season even began, Rivera stole teammate Derek Jeter's glove from his locker in the clubhouse, and he sold it to a memorabilia dealer for $2,500. The Yankees players called a team meeting to hold a vote where they decided to kick Rivera off the team. So the Yankees did what they had to do. They released him prior to the season even beginning. Rivera actually went on to a very long playing career in the Mexican League, where he played from 2007 all the way to 2019 before retiring at the age of 46. He's still active coaching in the Mexican League. And the last one that I'm going to do for today is the 1996 season's Ben Grieve. Now, Ben Grieve was the son of Tom Grieve, a former first-round pick of the Washington Senators, and at that time, general manager of the Texas Rangers. He was selected 2nd overall in the 1994 draft by the Oakland Athletics and had reached the big leagues by the age of 21. He was ranked the number 1 prospect in baseball prior to his arrival with the Oakland A's, and he won the Rookie of the Year award in 1998. Ben Grieve's most sought-after cards were released in the years immediately after being drafted in 1994, which, as I explained before, was a sign of more and more things to come, with players being included at younger and younger ages in Major League Baseball card products. This still happens today with Bowman First cards, but back in those days, there was no regulation about players being included in their Major League uniforms as early as their first year in the minor leagues. Ben Grieve's biggest cards were his 1994 Topps Traded Draft Pick card, followed by his 1995 Bowman and Bowman's Best releases, all of which were released at least 3 years prior to him making the major leagues. Now, after winning Rookie of the Year in 1998, Grieve would follow it up with another 2 really solid seasons in 1999 and 2000. He didn't break out as a star, but as a really young player in the league, he held his own and showed a lot of promise for the future. But following the 2000 season, he was traded to the Tampa Bay Devil Rays at the time, where his production fell off drastically as he started to battle against nagging injuries through his career. He was done and retired as a player by the age of 29 after only 9 seasons in the big leagues, where he did post a 113 OPS plus and about 8 WAR. He was never able to reproduce the early seasons that he had as a 21-year-old rookie for the Oakland A's. So in today's episode, we go from Jeffrey Hammonds to Brooks Kieschnick to Ruben Rivera to Ben Grieve. We had 2 guys that battled nagging injuries throughout their career. We had one guy that was a two-way player, and he wasn't able to develop as an outfielder or a pitcher into a serviceable major league player. And then we had one guy whose attitude and work ethic was constantly in his way. Again, it goes to show that baseball prospecting is not an easy business. Join me again next time, where I'll begin in 1997, and we'll step through another couple years of prospect bust. Until next time, take care, keep talking baseball, and we'll see you around.